This is a review from a player who has been playing since day one. I will talk about and analyze Genshin Impact world and the characters, the soundtrack, everything. I will say that this channel will not focus on this game, and this may be the last Genshin video for a while, or not. I intend to make videos from several different games, series and animes as well, and not focus only on Genshin. Well, this video will be very long, so let's get started. Talking about the negative aspects, Genshin cannot be a solid game, and therefore it will never be respected by most players, most gamers in the world. Being a gacha game and constantly evolving, Genshin has unfortunately harmed and concealed its good narrative story from the world. This group of people can't believe that the game proposed such a splendid story, and I think it's fair, because at the beginning of this journey isn't very inviting. In other words, it's hated because it's a gacha, and it would have been a high acclaimed game if it had been released as a standard RPG. However, ironically, it wouldn't be such a captivating and a wonderful game if it weren't ongoing. In fact, nowadays, the game continues to progress, getting better and more creative due to the extended development time. It's a double-edged sword. Secondly, the side characters and predominantly the side quests. Although it's a game that features some beautiful characters to get, the side characters make you feel like you're descending into the abyss. They are basic and common, and yet some of them have long side quests. Man, it's not that the side quest content is bad, I just can't care enough about random characters around the world that I will most likely never see again. Sometimes the design of the side characters is all the same. If you use the characters you get from the gacha, it would be much better. For example, not to remove this girl from the game, but imagine if her quest featured Nilo or Sino instead of her, or just focus more on Sino and Nilo in the middle of the desert. I would prefer that. What about you? The fact that all the characters' designs are like this bothers me a lot. Look at this comparison from the manga era, for example, but I noticed that they've improved it a bit in Genuval, although it's still not enough. It lacks creativity and effort. This is an area where they could improve, but it just keeps the same. Well, continuing, Genshin is a game that held back its true potential for a while. It's time to highlight a bit about the negative aspect of the narrative. I appreciate it being an ongoing game because the narrative wouldn't be as good if the developers didn't have time. So the narrative doesn't start strong or captivating, but minimally attractive in my opinion. I feel comfortable in the first two regions. I'd say Mondstadt is a good prologue and Liyue is very awesome. Actually very nice. The game is at least minimally engaging in my opinion at the beginning, although I'm the #1 hater of Inazuma. The game becomes excellent starting from Sumeru. If Sumeru hadn't been good, I would have quit the game, not gonna lie. Another very bad aspect of the game is that extremely important events that beautifully characterized certain characters will never return to the game again. Those who want to experience the development of certain characters would have to watch it on YouTube. That's it, I have nothing more to say. There are characters who had the complete development, the entire development, or reveal their entire backstory through these events. This is a great ways that the game offers. Like, have you seen Fishu or Kazuha in 2.8? You'll never see that again, so you need to see on YouTube. Yeah, that's why. Well, some particularities that make the negative difference. Besides being a gacha game and taking too long to release new stories and original content, filler updates are a stab in the chest, as you spend 1, 2 or even 3 months doing meaningless events. I don't even waste my time, bro, and I don't open this game since July. It's been almost 2 months and I don't even have the interest because there's no story content right now. Furthermore, the infinite grind is becoming exhausting. This game is already 4 years out from this review, And while we're approaching the start of Natlan, the game still had 2 or 3 more years to finally end. The prolonged progression is wearing us all out, and it's not the end. The farming system is mediocre and repetitive. To be fair, this is the downside of the game's gacha mechanics. Well, to be fair, this is the downside of the game's gacha mechanics. So yeah, what makes this game being bad is mostly because of the gacha content. And lastly, and the last negative point, is that you need an IQ of at least 150 to fully grasp the plot of the first 3 chapters. The story of Genshin is good from the start, except the Inazuma region. However, throughout the first 3 regions, up to Sumeru, many things are left between the lines. They are deep, yes, but the player will need to understand them on their own, or even research them to have all the nuances they are talking about. This is a problem, and this is why you find people saying Genshin's story is shallow. Never was. Problems that many things were left ambiguous for a while. This issue arises due to a problem that Genshin timeline has faced for a long time, the execution of its narrative. Although everything writing is of right quality and carefully crafted, the way it's presented to the player, it's not that amazing, you know. Many important plot content are hidden in books scattered across the map. You need to search them to fully understand what the story want to go, where it want to go, or curiosities that the main story will never tell you, like the book of Sun and Moon in Enkanomiya. It's an amazing book, but the game never said anything about it. You just need to read that or you don't. So Genshin Impact is a video game that won't convince you to like it. Unfortunately, that has to come from the player, who needs to enjoy playing and take pleasure in participating in this journey. So, why is it good? Why do I like it so much? These are questions I ask myself. Defending a controversial game like this is being like a lawyer trying to defend a guilty person in court. So, well, let's start with the basics. I think of Genshin as more of a RPG than a gacha game, focusing on exploring Teyvat, getting to know its characters, and delving into the secrets of that world. Gives me a very good feeling, one that I rarely find in any other game. In this game, exploration isn't useless. Everywhere you go, there is a story behind those beautiful mountains and flowers. The world is alive, and everywhere you step, there was a once upon a time. It's repetitive if you want it to be. Don't let the company control you like a slave. Play as much as necessary. I myself have quit and stayed away from the game like I'm doing right now. It's been 2 months because it wasn't the time to open it. If you focus on that instead of trying to farm every day, you already increase your own happiness by like 80%. Playing every day like a slave is all the developers want, but be yourself. Let's start the praises now, and of course it needs to be narrative, the first one, which is ironical because I was talking about the bad thing about the narrative 5 minutes ago, but that is actually how the game tells the story. The content of the story itself is very nice. The game begins with a captivating theme, in my opinion, and it's even crazier to realize that Genshin follows the label of a generic RPG. However, what set this game apart from the others is that it has turned everything generic into something unique, radiant, and well written, which upon close inspection doesn't even seem to be the same thing as a common RPG uses, like Island in the Sky, Abyss, Lost Technology. Whoa, RPGs love this, and the same biomes that adventure games offer, presenting an extremely ambitious plot. Genshin has a beautiful world and lots of characters development. It brings a captivating dynamism between villains. In this case, there isn't just one villain, but 2 or more, and they all have their motives and reasons for such chaos. I don't know much about this topic, to be honest, of world building, because it's a game that portrays everything we can imagine. However, slowly, as each region passes, Genshin's story becomes more beautiful, dense, and well written, remaining a promising game for a long time, leaving many unanswered questions that some even seemed pretentious. Dude, like, there were many questions and they weren't answering at all. At least at a certain point, answers began to emerge and new possibilities arose. After the events in Fontaine, the game ceased to be a mere promise and became a tangible reality, solidifying its status as definitely having a great plot. Genshin initially generated a lot of hype around Inazuma, the third region, but ended up being a major disappointment in terms of story. After that, Genshin's narrative trajectory seemed uncertain. I was honestly ready to quit the game if Sumeru was bad. Fortunately, the Sumeru region came out great both in story and exploration, raising the quality. However, despite its strengths, Sumeru left many questions unanswered, leaving the game's potential still just a promise. This finally ended in Fontaine, which I consider the climax of Genshin Impact, when the answers finally began to materialize. Finally, the game's characters are generally good, with some being surprisingly good and others even better. One of the charms of this game lies in its expansive world. There are characters who also know the abyss or the dark side of Teyvat, which is the world of the game. These special characters have deeper insights into the truth of Teyvat's world, making them particularly intriguing to me. However, while on the other hand, we have very shallow characters, irrelevant, including some overrated ones. The overall quality is positive. This game has like 120 characters right now. Of course, everyone won't be good. Now, I'd like to talk about the heart of Genshin Impact as a game, and there are two of them: the world quests and the soundtrack. I mentioned earlier that the side characters are a problem, but this stems more from a lack of attention to detail and apparent laziness of the developers. However, this doesn't extend to the world quests, which significantly expand the vast narrative. I talk about the quest in the game that is like that giant guy from Sumeru, or Ordo quest from Fontaine, or even that quest in the final part of the desert. Well, even that girl works. These quests are very nice and is the heart of the game. They are so integral that the game experience feels incomplete without them. Playing Genshin Impact just for the main quest would result in a far from complete experience, as these world quests not only complement the main story but also add depth and richness to it. I say there are two hearts in this game: after the world quests, and actually not after, but more important than the world quests themselves, the soundtrack. The soundtrack in this game is whoa, just whoa. This game's soundtrack brings life and atmosphere to the game, serving as a perfect complement to its biggest proposition, an immersive adventure. It's truly the icing on the cake, undeniably a professionally crafted game. This game is very professional. The creators bring together top talents from various fields and professions to deliver the best work, and the soundtrack is one of them. It's evident in the quality and success of the game. Genshin soundtrack stands out as my favorite in fiction, to be honest. Yeah, my favorite in fiction. It draws great inspiration from classical music. Its vast variety is truly remarkable, offering a memorable and diverse selection of compositions created by brilliant composers. Bro, take the main theme of the Fatui, for example. Every instrument in that music represents and symbolizes a different characters among the Fatui. This level of detail and craftsmanship is something that I rarely, if ever, find in any other RPG I have played, or the fact that the boss themes literally characterize almost the entire plot of the character, like Signora, or how well it built up Scaramouche as a character. There are not only compositions that add immersion but also extremely well written one. More than even the most famous composers on the market, it features extraordinary complex and creative tempos and chords. For example, there is a piece that the rhythm is made using a pocket watch, or another where literally the music composer created the arrangement and even sings in it. Unfortunately, being an ongoing game, or because it's a gacha, it never won an award at the Game Awards for its soundtrack, although it should have been at least mentioned. Bro, if that award was serious, the story would have been different. The music in this game is a major pillar in its characterization. Now I'll talk about the 5 nations and, for their conclusion, the role of the traveler in this story. In this story, the first nation Mondstadt has beautiful ideas. Vanity is a character who represents the freedom and serenity of his nation very well, and he's still one of the best written characters in the game right now, and his final line in Mondstadt is fantastic. What does freedom really mean when demanded of you by a god? And he answers, a freedom demanded by a god is not freedom at all.
What does freedom really mean when demanded of you by a god?
Freedom, if demanded of you by an archon, is really no freedom at all.
A simple and efficient story, great for a prologue, which was Mondstadt. The second nation, Liyue, is about legacy and independence. People of Liyue must move forward without their own archon, maintaining the legacy he gave to his people. The nation must begin to realize its all potential and protect itself, and wait for the last contract to be hammered out. I have an idea of what this last contract may be, but I'm not sure. Liyue is honestly boring for the most part, but the final stretch from the moment we meet Child has a very good pacing, and it has a very rich lore, mainly due to Zhongli and Xiao. Xiao's story quest is fantastic. Third nation, Inazuma, is lost potential, bro. But I think the game was never going to manage it from the start. Japan is a very familiar country for us who know a lot about the culture, and Genshin tried in its chapter to absorb a good part of it and didn't focus on just one aspect. The conclusion is that everything ended up being very superficial. In the end, Raiden Shogun had the mind of a child, and not having Kazuha backstory can save this region. The fourth nation, Sumeru, was the salvation of Genshin. Everything improved and the narrative progressed a lot. Even though the desert wasn't great overall, I take my hat off to the entire forest area and the cast of characters from this region, especially Nahida, who is one of the best in the game. It was from here that Genshin started to really show its worth. The 5th nation, Fontaine, but Genshin on a level that I never imagined it would reach, which is absolutely amazing. Big fiction. The level of detail, twists, and writing was better than ever. How the entire prophecy of Fontaine mixed with Furina's humanity, and how Furina herself plays a messiah role, is outstanding. I consider Fontaine's final act one of the masterpieces I've ever consumed. I could make an entire video just talking about Fontaine, the climax of Genshin. You can criticize Genshin as much as you want, but if you finish at Fontaine's story and say it's bad, bro, you know nothing, please. Lastly, I wanted to talk a bit about the traveler's role in this story. Without notice, or if you haven't yet, the traveler is irrelevant most of the time, and where this was most evident was in Fontaine. And actually, that's the protagonist's purpose. The game makes a point of making it clear several times that we are just spectators. One day, all those characters will go away. We are the ones who traverse many worlds, and Tevat's story will be eternally engraved in our memory. Thus, we will be responsible for telling Tevat's story across many worlds and stars. That's the beauty of the travelers and their role in Genshin Impact story. We are observers of the world, so if we're not doing anything, that's okay. For all these reasons, I'm tired of speaking. It's not a game for everyone, and I'm swimming against the tide. Genshin is long, heavy, and easy to tire of. However, it's a game that I don't give up playing, and I wish it were a little more loved by society for all the strengths it presents. Unfortunately, its bad side overshadows its good side, and I think it's relatively deserved. For how it has presented, it's a game already great in my opinion. As a gacha game, it falls short, but as an RPG, it stands out. Ultimately, your experience with this game depends on whether you prioritize the gacha aspect or the RPG adventure elements. Although its ending is still unknown in your time, it's expected to happen in 2 or 3 years. If it concludes horribly, like Inazuma, it would easily be the biggest disappointment of my life, but otherwise, it will become an unforgettable journey for me, one that I will remember for the rest of my life.